Welcome back, everyone. Draft season is upon us. As the title gives away, in this video, I'll be covering the top 75 running backs for the 2025 season. It is the most deep, sicko, degenerate, perfect rankings you'll find anywhere on the internet. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Shawn. I've worked in college football, the NFL, and now I'm here to help you win championships. So let's lock in. Number 1, Jamir Gibbs. He goes third among running backs in ADP. I have him first. They go from Ben Johnson to John Morton. I think they'll be a little bit more run heavy. It's still Dan Campbell running the show. And I'm not necessarily sure if Morton is as loyal to David Montgomery, who takes about half the work compared to Gibbs, to redistribute that in Gibbs' favor. Now, when Gibbs is given an opportunity, David Montgomery missed a lot of the end of last season. These are points. So he's going absolutely off, including 41. This is standard PPR. He's going freaking nuts. So for that reason, for that genuine break fantasy football to the level not seen since peak Christian McCaffrey, that's what puts Gibbs number 1 for me. Number 2, Saquon Barkley. He was the number 1 overall running back last year, I believe. He's getting a decent amount of hate relative to price on the internet. He used to go about 2nd overall. Now he's at 4.4 on Underdog. I still think this is an elite team. They're going to win a lot of games. Landon Dickerson is a concern. They're also, I believe, replacing Mekhi Becton, if I'm not mistaken. But they still have what projects to be a top 5 run-blocking offensive line led by 2 tackles that are the Protector of the Year nominees in the top 10. I think Barkley will catch a few more passes. I think they'll pass a little bit more now that Kellen Moore has gone to New Orleans. And Saquon proved that he could catch passes in New York. And when Philly's winning so many games, they don't have to pass like that. And Hurts also took a lot of work at the goal line. The tush push is still here, but in such a live offensive environment, Barkley is one of the best in terms of creating yards above what he's expected to be blocked for. Him and Derrick Henry blew out the position compared to any other players we've seen, frankly, in a couple years. So he's still 29. Age is a bit of a concern. Injuries are a bit of a concern, but to me, he belongs right here at number 2. Number 3, Bijan Robinson. Amazing player. At this level, you're tweaking and nitpicking the most small items. So the one concern I have with Bijan is in the last 3 games. So Michael Penix played the last 3 games. Now, this is a tiny sample size. It's not necessarily indicative of what's going to happen in the future, but a lot of Bijan's value is gotten out of the receiving game. He's an amazing receiving back, generational talent in that regard from the running back position, really in all respects. Tyler Algier is still there, but these 3 numbers, 2 catches, 9 yards, 3 catches, 8 yards, 2 catches, 3 yards, if Penix is looking down the field and gunslinging more, and if they're losing games, this defense doesn't look that great, that bumps him down to 3 for me. I mean, he's still an awesome play. Lower injury risk compared to some of the other running backs, according to some of the models you look at, but that little piece puts him right at the end of tier 1 for me. Now down to tier 2, Christian McCaffrey. He is as polarizing of a player as can be, and for good reason. Either he's breaking fantasy football, RB1, absolute stud, running the ball, receiving the ball, one of the best receiving backs this league has ever seen, one of the better pure runners as well. But Achilles, especially, I believe it's 2 of them, are no joke. So that has to bump him down at least to tier 2. Now, if you're in the middle end of the first round and you're willing to roll the dice and take a risk, I understand in season long if you're just like, you know what, let someone else pay for him, let someone else draft him, and I'll just pick up the slack in other positions. I totally understand, especially with Garendo having his own injury concerns. If there was a very clear, like last year, Jordan Mason, if you were able to have McCaffrey and Mason, you would at least feel all right about having that backfield secured. But because of the upside, it's a top 5 probably run blocking offensive line from what I've looked at in San Francisco, and the defense isn't supposed to be great, so I think that they'll have to throw the ball a decent amount, which he's one of the best. He's Devon Achane level of a receiver. That's going to open up a lot of opportunities for CMC to come in, take the workload, dominate like we're used to, if he's able to stay healthy. So that's what puts him 4 for me. Number 5, now, if we were playing preseason fantasy football, we would be writing off Ashton Jeanty for his life. However, he is an elite prospect. You don't get drafted 6th overall. Pete Carroll is a run-first, run-heavy coach. This is a middle-of-the-road type of offensive line, which is fine. They're not awful. Like, you think Raiders bad. I see them as middle of the pack. Colton Miller got a big extension for a good reason. They have other guys who are more power run blockers. And Ashton Jeanty is an all-around stud at the position. And he's young. And he can take an extreme amount of carries at his age. So his injury concern relative to other guys, just off his age, if you're just looking at that agnostic, puts him in a good place that you're investing this heavily in the running back position. He didn't catch a lot of passes in his platform season at Boise State, but he can catch the ball. He did it 2 years ago. They're trying to get him close to the record at Boise State. He rushed for 2,600 yards. Sometimes it's just that obvious in terms of the talent. There's risk with the situation, but Geno also is very good in dome games. I think they'll be losing a good bit, and he'll catch a lot of passes. I think there's not necessarily a Devon Achane route, but he has that multi-way of getting to fantasy points and fantasy value. Number 6 is the man I just referenced, Devon Achane. Now, the Miami offensive line is definitely a big concern, both on a pass blocking and run blocking. We saw against the Bears in the preseason. They want to get someone else at the goal line, or maybe they're just resting Achane, so we'll see. But what's really the name of the game for Achane is quick passes, targets. He led the NFL in receiving yards as a running back last year. I think he has the most within the last 3 seasons, but it's by, I think, a yard or 2. But still, that matters. So, for example, back in the day, and including now, Alvin Kamara has never rushed for a 1,000-yard season, but he's always been a top 15 running back in terms of PPR. I think that Achane, hopefully this loads, that Achane, given the opportunity, he's putting up ridiculous numbers regardless of who's back there. I think you open up some targets from Jonnu, and running back targets across the league has gone down the past few years, and I think it'll slightly uptick. And if your offensive line is bad, intuitively you got to dump it down, and he's really the guy to go to. Now, there's a lot of injury concern because he's a smaller build. As it says, 191 pounds. That's not ideal, but the modern NFL running back is getting a little smaller. He's able to avoid contact, especially if there's some kind of Tyreek Hill situation where either he's slowed down, he doesn't attract as many targets. Obviously, it's contingent on Tua staying healthy, but I think there's still a lot of opportunity despite the offensive line here for Achane. So number 7, still here in tier 2, is Derrick Henry. I know he's older, but the logic on Derrick Henry to be amongst these other great running backs is simply Derrick Henry is built different. Derrick Henry is simply built different. Actually, looks like Sleeper likes him a lot more than I do. He had one of the best rush yards over expectation, one of the better pure runners still in this league. Baltimore's more of a middle of the road run blocking team. They definitely have some concerns in terms of that. They're really built to pass block and protect Lamar so he can extend plays and find open guys downfield. They're going to be winning a lot of games. I think the one thing that bumps him down from, he was putting up numbers like these guys last year. Why is he down here? Is, first of all, Keaton Mitchell looks pretty good. I think in blowouts, which Baltimore's favored to win, I think, most of their games next year. Obviously, Vegas doesn't get it right. They'll probably win, in my estimation, probably 12 to 13 games, but they'll be blowing out some of these bad teams, and I think that we'll see Keaton Mitchell get some of these late game carries. The Baltimore defense looks awesome. I think they're just going to be kicking a whole lot of butt in the regular season, and you have a 31-year-old running back. You have a capable backup. You also have Justice Hill who can catch passes. So I think he's going to be a little bit frustrating in terms of the number of volume and usage. And I think even if you look at his sleeper totals, some of these games he can definitely slow down. Remember, these are standard and PPR points. He can definitely slow down on some of these attempts, some of these games. He does get a little bit less of usage, and that's a concern with Henry for me. And number 8, tier 3, Josh Jacobs. Now, this is a pretty tight tier. It's all second-round guys. I'll have a video coming out soon of breaking down pick by pick the first 2 rounds. Obviously, you got to get those right to try to win championships. And if you mess up those rounds, you're in a lot of trouble. So, Jacobs, the clear number 1 guy here. Marshawn Lloyd's practicing, but this is Jacobs' backfield 100%. He is a do-it-all running back. The line isn't great for run blocking, but he dealt with that last year. He wasn't necessarily the most efficient runner, but he did what he could given the blocking, and he's also a very good receiving back, including the ball with his hands. He's one of the better yak running backs, which you don't really think of. You think of him as like a powerful guy, but in an offense that's supposed to be pretty good. Jordan Love's going to be a lot healthier this year. I know he had the surgery on the thumb, but he was dealing with a knee that I thought really messed up his performance. I think this offense is going to be in a pretty good spot, and with some of their receiving options going down or being questionable outside of Matthew Golden at the moment, I think Jacobs is a legitimate target earner in this offense, and that's going to really put him above the other guys in this tier. And there are very few genuine feature backs left in this league. Number 9, someone who's very polarizing in the fantasy football community because he was a mid-round pick last year. There's definitely a history of later round selections that didn't pan out. The second year, basically, they'll get a big role, produce, and then fall off. For example, like a Michael Carter or someone that's maybe a Steve Slayton might be a better example. He was going first round the next year after his rookie year, and he was a late pick from memory. And Bucky was a 4th round pick. Now, I think this is an exception. First, the Rachaad White injury. I think he'll be fine by the regular season, but it definitely would aid Bucky to get receiving work. His efficiency metrics, no matter what way you slice it, are just out of this world. He was one of the best yak guys with the ball, one of the better rush yards over expectation. And if you look last year, he was barely playing half the year. Look at these numbers, these carries, they're basically nothing. And then once he actually, second half, started to get opportunities, he was going absolutely off. And their run blocking wasn't necessarily that awesome last year. Their pass blocking was, but run blocking was around middle of the road, which if you say that on the main line streets, people think you're crazy, but that's just the truth. So Bucky's efficiency, his vision, his creativity as a runner, he can catch the ball, he can make people miss. Rachaad White's one of the best receiving backs in this league, but so is Bucky Irving. And if Rachaad is down, Bucky's going to the moon. I have him basically right at price. I think he's justified, but in the current landscape right now, at least if you look on Twitter, that's a controversial position, according to many. So, second round, Bucky with opportunities. I think even if Sean Tucker takes some rushing work, his receiving chops, like you see these are some of the targets, catches, and yards. I think he could expand that part of his game, and maybe Rachaad White gets phased out of the offense totally, but or take a lesser role for that matter. But Bucky is so high upside, and there's downside, but the talent is undeniable in my opinion. Number 10, Jonathan Taylor, one of the best pure runners in the National Football League. The reason he isn't ranked ahead of some of these other guys is that he has missed between 3 and 7 games the past few years. There's a lot of mouths to feed in the Indianapolis Colts offensive room, whether that's Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, and Pierce, A.D. Mitchell. If Anthony Richardson gets the starting role, he could take some of that goal line work. Tyler Warren could take some of that goal line work. And with the injury concerns, the offensive line is probably top 10 in terms of run blocking. So he'll be very good. The Colts are in a lot of close games. So if you believe the Colts are going to be a good team, a lot of the games are like 1.5 underdog, so that they're very contentious as a team. Now, he's one of the best, shout out to fantasy points, in terms of points per game when they're winning. So with the injuries and the other guys in the offense, that bumps him down to 10. But again, one of the few featured guys that's left in this league. Number 11 is the rookie Omarion Hampton, first round pick. Losing Slater definitely makes him a little bit riskier. The Najee Harris situation is pretty contentious. We'll see what happens with his eye. If Najee is playing, could bump down Hampton maybe 2-3 spots, but I think it's going to be the same no matter, relatively speaking, no matter what. I think Najee's workload would just get split between a bunch of guys. Maybe that's Haskins, Vidal. They're not going to burn Hampton down to the ground with 400 plus carries. I think he'll get a lot of work. They had a lot of needs on this team, and Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman, they're run-heavy guys. The line should be okay. I'm not dooming as hard as others are in terms of their line, at least on the run blocking side, and I think Justin Herbert is good enough, and the Chargers have survived with worse. So I think he'll be fine. As a prospect, he's a do-it-all prospect. Can run, can catch the ball. He goes first round for a reason. First round rookies get used. So to me, he's in the same tier, but generally in drafts, you can get him a little cheaper than some of the other guys. Staying in this tier, the man who just got paid, James Cook. It's really more so, Cook is a very good player. The line is very good. The Buffalo Bills are favored in, I believe, 14 or 15 of their games this season. They're got to be first or second in points scored. He had, 16, 18 touchdowns last year, and this offense is still wheels up. If even Josh Allen's goal line work slows down even just a hair, James Cook is going to print. And the narrative that also goes around with James Cook is that he doesn't catch passes. And that's, I think, more of an offensive scheme thing. And when you also have Ty Johnson, you have Ray Davis, who are capable pass catchers, and they'll steal some of the work. But James Cook caught passes in college. That was actually arguably his best skill when he was at Georgia. And he's certainly capable of doing that. I think it's more of the offense, the scheme, and when you're the guy, the main guy in potentially the league's best offense, when you're winning games constantly, that makes James Cook a very viable player. And I have him ahead of his ADP, which will go up a little bit because of the contract concerns. But in general, I've heard sentiment that he's going to be the same, and I don't agree with that. Going down a tier, Kyren Williams. Now, if Matthew Stafford has a good back, I might slide him up to tier 3, but for now, he's secure in his role. The Rams are one of the better run blocking lines. If it's Jimmy G, the overall pie of the offense is going to go down. Kyren isn't much of a receiving back, so if they're losing games, they generally don't throw the running back a ton over in LA, but that could be Jarquez Hunter or Blake Corum's role to take some of that work from him. Some of his efficiency metrics last year weren't great, but when you get the level of usage and snap share that Kyren gets, he's finished higher than this ranking before. And some of the usage has been, in terms of snaps, has been around first in the NFL. I mean, 95, 83, 86. Like, you dream of these numbers. Like, Bijan doesn't hit these numbers. I think this will go down to 75, 80, just 24. That's a little bit concerning. So that's why he's down around high RB2 range for me. Number 14, Breece Hall. This is getting a lot of buzz on the internet because both Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis rotated in. The poor man's James Cook narratives are getting cooked in. I still believe in the talent. There's the possibility that he gets traded, so that boosts him up a little bit. I do have him below his current ADP, but I've heard some people put him down to 15, 16, 17, but I still believe in the talent. I think that when things really get down to the brass tacks and they're in close games, that Isaiah Davis was a good receiving back. Braylon Allen profiles as a good rushing back. Now, he wasn't great in his rookie year, but it's low sample size. He's a young guy. It's a new coaching staff. This run blocking line is supposed to be excellent in New York. That also includes Justin Fields. This could easily be the team that leads the league in rushing. And maybe Breece Hall loses some of that work to the other guys, but at this price in a committee world, I'll take him as a high RB2. And I think his price will go down a bit. So these ADPs are a little bit fluid. This obviously is not going to be the same forever. So Breece Hall, high RB2 for me. 15. Now, this is going to get me in some heat. I just don't love the talent profile. They brought in Samaje Perine, who's one of the better receiving backs in terms of EPA. What is EPA? That's expected points added, which is what down distance and yardage you're contributing to your team. So basically, are you contributing in important situations? And Chase Brown is one of my bigger fades for a couple reasons. So the Cincinnati offensive line, not supposed to be great. This offense is built to pass. The defense is supposed to be awful, and they're going to be losing games quite a bit. Now, that's mostly involves Burrow slinging it to arguably the best receiving duo in football. I think it's going to be a little bit more of a rotation. Taj Brooks was taken 30 picks in terms of draft capital after Chase Brown, so those things concern me. Now, as an RB2, I'll take him. I'll probably end up not getting much of him if at all, but the hype is getting crazy for me. He was a very effective receiver, but because of Pirine, who got some of the third down work during the starters in the preseason, that scares me a lot because Chase Brown's main contributions are as a receiver. He's kind of like Devon Achane. He's that type of player, not as dynamic as Achane, not even close as a player, but in that type of, there are kind of two ways for running back to score. Either they're rushing or getting a combo of receiving work. Those are the two main ways. So he's more of the receiving side with Pirine. Brooks can catch the ball. There's definitely concerns with Chase for me at price. Now, number 16. This is everybody's favorite tier. Sus Edwards, shout him out. Go follow his YouTube. And I earlier did a breakdown of this whole tier. Now, my rankings have changed slightly with new information. I still think Ken Walker, in terms of his sheer upside and talent as a running back, makes him worth it at this price. Now, in a season long, I think it's totally justified to just pay the money, get Charbonnet, invest in this backfield. Clint Kubiak used Alvin Kamara a lot. It's a running back-centric offense. This offensive line isn't supposed to be great. One of the surprising things about Ken Walker is that he can catch the ball. That's not something that he did in Michigan State. He was one of the better pure runners in the NFL, but he also graded as an effective receiving back. And even if it's a bit of a committee, based on some of the coach speak and what Seattle wants to do, this is going to be a pretty good defensive team. I think they're going to want to control the clock a bit, take some of the pressure off of Sam Darnold, and run some heavy personnel and basically get a lot of work out of Kenneth Walker. He's one of the most talented running backs in this sport. If he was in a better line environment, I would have him ranked higher, but he's a very good value. All right, and number 17, Chuba Hubbard. Now, last year he was one of the best pure runners in the sport. He was third in rush yards over expectation based on his blocking. This profiles to be a very good offensive line in Carolina. They're one of the, I believe, the biggest spender actually in terms of offensive line with the contracts of the team. Chuba is going to lose some receiving work to Rico Dowdle, who they signed, who's super underrated, who will be mentioned later on in this video. And with that said, the Carolina Panthers, the offense is going to be better. The defense won't be great, so that's a bit of a concern with some game script stuff. But I think this offense with Bryce Young, they bring in Ted McMillan. The line is great. I think they're going to do a lot more offensively, and that's going to spell a lot of opportunity for Chuba Hubbard to score. He's going to be the goal line guy as far as we know it. Rico could steal some of that, but I think he's more of a third down breather type of back at this point. But in terms of the overall offense, who he is as a runner, the team investment also shows that they believe in him as well. Dave Canales is a run-heavy coach. So Chuba, again, very good value at his price. Scrolling down, I'll try to scroll up from time to time. Can't always fit everybody in one little screenshot here. James Conner. Now, Conner would be higher if he didn't have so many injury concerns. He's missed time 2 years ago and 3 years ago. Last season, I think he only missed about a game or two. The line over here is supposed to be not as great. James Conner is actually quite an effective receiver. He's one of the better running backs in terms of yak with the ball in his hands, yak over expected, which is yards after the catch, over what you're expected based on how people are blocking from the tracking data. There's some talk of Trey Benson getting a role here and taking some of the work from him. I don't see that necessarily. I think he's one of the few leaning feature backs that's available at this price. It starts getting into more committees once you get a few more guys down here. But this offense is supposed to be pretty good. I think Vegas has them around 9 or 10 overall in terms of points. Now, if you just looked at the Kyler Murray preseason, not offseason performance, you would think, well, this team's in a lot of trouble. But there's a lot of talented pieces. A bet on Connor is a bet on the offense. That's who they really want to get the ball. He can catch the ball. He can run it. Lot of good stuff going on with James Conner. So even with the injury risk, you might have to beef up the position a little bit in season long and not have him as necessarily a zero or hero type of RB for that type of squad for like a home league. But the upside is there. If he's healthy, he's going to put up points. And he's a great value. And he's done a lot better than 18. But the injury concerns Benson are what bumps him down a bit. All right. And number 19, RJ Harvey. Now with the Henderson performance, he's coming up soon. Of the rookies that also stood out to me, RJ Harvey played a lot of time with the starters. It's a very good offensive line, more so for pass block, but run blocking, they're still very capable. Bo Nix is one of the leading quarterbacks in terms of throwing to running backs in the National Football League. And that benefits Harvey, who's a capable receiver in comparison to J.K. Dobbins, who was an efficient runner with the Chargers last year, but doesn't profile as much as a receiving back. And there are some targets in this offense. Cortland Sutton's the main guy. Marvin Mims is getting more snaps and more usage, but I think he's more of a limited deep target type of guy. I don't think he'll be getting volume. Yes, there's Evan Engram. Yes, Vele, Pat Bryant. There are others, but I think RJ Harvey can legitimately earn a lot of targets in this offense. I think they'll be pretty good. Harvey was, a second-round pick, so there's a lot of team investment. Sean Payne running backs do pretty well in this fantasy football game that we play, and that is what gets him to be 19. Number 20, Alvin Kamara, Saints. Now I'm concerned with this offense, whether that's with Spencer Rattler, Jake Haener, Tyler Shuck at quarterback. I'm concerned, and that's why Kamara is down here at 20 compared to historically, he's never finished, I believe, 16th in the PPR scoring. So, I mean, you look at some of these numbers last year, which are awesome, but it's a different, look at these PPR stats. Never finished below 16. But this offense is going to be a lot worse. The offensive line is still going to be fine. They added Kelvin Banks. They were a good run blocking line last year, but the team totals won't be great. The trade possibility is baked into the price. He's 30 now. So there's concerns with Kamara. He obviously is a little bit injury prone, but nothing too egregious compared to some of the other older running backs. Like kind of same deal as James Conner. So for the offense and his talent level, and I think he'll be able to still be a major target earner. He's one of the best receiving backs this league has ever seen. So for that reason, very good RB2 candidate in a deep RB draft season. I mean, we're already at RB20 and still capable players. Number 21, TreVeyon Henderson. Flavor of the day on Twitter. He had a great preseason performance. For me, it was kind of as expected. He was always good with the ball in his hands. He's always been in committees when he was in college. Explosive player, great receiver, good running back. But this is a committee. Now, the Patriots are going to be around league average. They were one of the worst lines last season, which gives TreVeyon the opportunity to be pretty efficient, I think, with his touches. But I think that people will be frustrated with the lack of top-end usage. Ramondre and potentially Antonio Gibson could take some of that work from him. And the line is more about league average versus some of these other guys that are in a little bit of better situations. The Patriots offense is going to be better. Drake May is supposed to take a big step. There are other weapons in this offense. I think TreVeyon will get a decent amount of targets, but Ramondre is going to be a thorn in his side. So that's why he's 21 for me. But still in the same tier as the other guys. He certainly belongs. Now down to tier 6. So just to recap, everybody. Tier 6, DeAndre Swift. Now, he was very bad as a runner in terms of how he did in compared to his expected blocking numbers last year. He's one of the worst in the National Football League, actually. But because of his role, the line is supposed to improve, and Ben Johnson, and really no clear sign of a true number 2 coming in. Now, he might get goal line carries, which he didn't really get last season. He might get goal line carries taken by him by either Roschon Johnson, Kyle Monangai, maybe Jamal Williams comes in there and gets signed. So goal line, I don't expect to be on his side, but as a receiver, DeAndre Swift is one of the better receiving backs in the league. At RB22, which is around the dead zone-ish, low RB2 zone, he's still going to get a lot of opportunities. This is going to be a very ball control type of offense, at least the way that Ben Johnson is talking about it. I think some of the scheme, coaching, better line, a better Caleb Williams, and maybe some slight regression on his rushing performance himself. I don't think that he's awful as a runner. I think maybe he's average, below average. That plus the receiving work, plus the role, for me, puts him at the top of this tier. 23, Pacheco, another dead zone role type of back. He had the broken leg last year that really limited him. There are some concerns with Kareem Hunt, but if you look at some of the Kareem Hunt numbers, he was genuinely the worst running back in the National Football League last year. And while Pacheco might be mid, he might be overrated, whatever the haters got to say about Pacheco, he's not that bad. This line does lose Joe Thuney to the Bears, but they still have a couple of stars there. Probably average, maybe slightly above average, but a step down from what they're used to in Kansas City. Now, there's a bit of a lack of excitement among some of the backups. I think Brashard Smith can conjure up a degree of a receiving role in this offense. I don't think that he's necessarily an instant Jerick McKinnon, but he'll take some of that receiving work. But when you're the starting running back on the Kansas City Chiefs, projected to be one of the top offenses again, like they are every year under Patrick Mahomes and with Andy Reid, and he's the guy, they're going to be winning games, and in their eyes, they want to get Pacheco the ball. But unfortunately, if reality dictates that they're in closer games, they're going to have to use Mahomes more. With the Rashee Rice suspension, there's also opportunity to both run the ball more and to get a few targets from Pacheco. That's not really been his game a ton, but as a starting guy in the Chiefs, solid as a back-end RB2. But there's definitely a big tier drop, 5 to 6, as you can kind of tell. Sticking on the role argument is Bijan Robinson. Line is below average. Offense is supposed to be awesome. Jaden Daniels had an awesome rookie season. This is kind of built off the assumption that Terry McLaurin signs. If he's just totally crashing out, they got to just trade for someone or sign someone. They're not going to go into the season expecting Deebo Samuel to be the number 1 receiver. It's insane. I think they'll get it done. I think it's another James Cook situation. By the time this video comes out, maybe he's signed already. So perhaps it's a view into the future. So we'll see. But with B-Rob, he's definitely in the Jag type of category. But Jag in a good offense is good for fantasy football. I think JCM and Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, who goes by Bill, I think he's solid, but the chances a round 7 rookie snatches Brian Robinson's chain, especially early on for season long, it seems rich to me. And at price, I think Brian Robinson is underrated. Just because when you're the starting guy in a productive offense where you have a mobile quarterback in Jayden Daniels, they want to be able to just hand it off to Brian Robinson and save Jayden's body. Especially, they want him to be a good quarterback for a long time. Lamar Jackson, for example, who's the most comparable player to Jayden Daniels, they don't run him much by the goal line, and for good reason. As a smaller build quarterback, you want to preserve his body and not abuse a thinner frame. And when you have a solid running back, I don't think Brian Robinson's anything special, but I don't think he's bad. He basically met expectations both as a receiver, which he'll lose work to Austin Eckler, and as a runner. But there's enough juice here in this role, in this offense, that I think Brian Robinson's going to be able to produce enough numbers to be justified as a back-end RB2, maybe as a flex. He's had good snap percentages. He's in a good offense. He's put up good numbers, especially early on. So, RB28 last year. And I think this offense could take a step forward. You add Laramie Tunsil, there's a better line. So I think there's a lot of positives for Brian Robinson. And this is as a back-end RB2 flex. 25 is Pollard. This is more of a bet that Tyjae Spears will at least be all right. If Tyjae is just totally cooked, it seems like maybe a 50-50 that he's ready for week 1. We'll get more information as time goes on. But Tony is one of the better pure run blocker or runners. The run blocking line should improve, but I think they're built better to protect Cam Ward and get the passing game going. I think that's more of a boost for Cam, who like to hold the ball in Miami quite a bit and extend plays. For Ridley, for Chig, Lockett, Ayamanor, I think those are the real beneficiaries. Pollard is one of the better pure rushers at the position. The line's supposed to be a little better than what he dealt with last year. They're definitely going to be losing games, but he's at least capable as a receiver. But Tyjae is a very good receiver as a running back. So I think he's kind of similar to Brian Robinson has a better situation, worse player. Pollard has a much worse situation, but better player. But I would give the edge to B-Rob here. Pollard in negative game scripts. This team is supposed to lose games. Now, if you believe heavily in the Tennessee Titans to win games next year, then Pollard's going to smash price. But the inconsistency is a bit concerning when he isn't getting a ton of volume and usage. It definitely can affect him. And he's not much of a pass catcher, but he's capable. So for his offense, if you traded him to the Commanders, I would put him a lot higher. He's obviously a Titan. So for that reason, 25. Same tier, though. They're close. 26, David Montgomery. I kind of made reference to. I have Gibbs up here at number 1. Montgomery, I think, would be the biggest person that's affected by Frank Ragnow getting switched for Tate Ratledge. I do think that Tate Ratledge is going to be a good player, but Ragnow was legitimately one of the best players in football. And for Montgomery, who's a little more dependent on his offensive line, he's a little bit more of a between the tackles kind of guy. I think that's going to bump him down just slightly. He's missed games the past few seasons. That kind of gets overlooked because when you don't miss big amounts of time, that kind of goes under the radar. He was one of the better receivers. He posted amazing receiving numbers, but I think some of that is due to regress a bit. I don't see him as a tip top. I think he was top 5 or 10 in terms of PFF receiving grade. I think naturally that just goes down. Now, if it's genuine development, awesome, but I think Gibbs is just going to take, it's going to go from like 50-50 to like maybe 65-35 or 60-40 Gibbs. That's how I'm seeing it. There isn't necessarily a scientific or analytic way to ascertain that other than the change in coordinator, and just the trend is moving towards Gibbs, so I want to be ahead of that. Still a great offense. They're still going to score points. If they're losing games, I think they're just going to bite the bullet and go to Gibbs a little more. If you think the Lions are going to be a 1 seed type of team, then Montgomery's still that guy, and he's still awesome. So, still same tier as these other guys, but slight downgrade for me relative to the market. Still in this tier, Aaron Jones, the team trades for Jordan Mason. He seems geared to be the goal line back. That doesn't really affect Aaron Jones a ton. They gave Aaron Jones a lot of goal line work, but he was frankly just awful around the goal line. He kind of does everything else well. He's a good receiver. He's a good runner. He's done better than expectation in terms of his receiving. The offensive line is supposed to be better. A lot of the offensive linemen did miss time last year, including Christian Darrisaw. But if they're able to stay healthy, and with J.J. McCarthy back there at quarterback, this could spell good opportunities for Aaron Jones. McCarthy certainly threw a bit to his running backs at Michigan. I think he's a second-year player, but as a rookie, I think they'll try to make the offense maybe a little bit easier and shorter oriented, maybe a more selective, deep offense, kind of like what he did in Michigan, where a lot of it's intermediate, underneath, and then the occasional deep shots to mostly Jordan Addison. And then that will benefit Aaron Jones with a good offensive line. They'll be winning games, in my estimation, relative to expectation. This defense looks awesome. They just seem pretty built to succeed, and I'm biased, Michigan guy here. I think JJ is going to be better as a real-life quarterback than Sam Darnold's. Now, is he going to be able to sling as much? We'll see, but I think this offense is going to be good, and that's good news for Aaron Jones, who you're taking as a flex guy, but it shows the depth of the running back position. Number 28, still in this tier. I'm definitely below market price on him. Caleb Johnson. Now, he was a good player at Iowa, kind of a home run hitting running back. I think it's just a really bad situation. He does inherit the Najee Harris role. I think there's going to be a bit more of a committee. Kenny Gainwell was getting involved from what I've heard, and that spells a lot of trouble for Caleb Johnson, Jalen Warren, and now Gainwell. This could be a nasty three-way committee. The Pittsburgh Steelers are supposed to be a pretty methodical offense like they've been the past few years. I don't think they're going to score a ton of points. This offensive line is below average. And I think Caleb needs a better line to really succeed and hit his potential. And I'm just not in love with the situation. I think there's a lot of questions in terms of who's really getting the carries over here. And I think it's going to take time. So if you're in a season-long league, it's going to take time for him to get real opportunities. So you might need some significant patience on him. So he just scares me, but there's real upside. So I think he deserves to be in this sort of flex conversation. Now, number 29, obviously it echoes a bit of the Aaron Jones argument, but I'll also share a few little nuggets on Mason. So Mason, in terms of rush yards over expectation, as a 49er, he was one of the best in the league, top 5, 10 type of guy. Really good pure runner, really awkward as a receiving back. Now, he can catch the ball, but I wouldn't expect that out of him. Now, if you believe in this offense, if you believe the Vikings are going to win games, then Jordan Mason is a smash. But if you believe that this is a mid team, they're 8-9, they're going to be a little more pass heavy. This is Kevin O'Connell offense. Then Mason's a bit of a fade, but this is where the backfield start to get a little bit murky. But Mason is a genuinely very good pure runner as a running back, and he's in a good offense. The 49ers did have a good line last year, so that matters, but Mason did what he could given that opportunity. And he's a little bit unlucky in the red zone as a 49er, so those touchdowns I think will roll in his favor. But still, I have him as more of a flex guy. This is kind of where running back starts to get a little bit thin. But still, we're 30 deep. So, Joe Mixon, now you're saying, why on earth is he this low? Joe Mixon is a very good football player. However, he is hurt right now. They traded a future third for Woody Marks. They signed Nick Chubb. Yeah, he might be washed. I don't think so. I think he'll be okay. Is he going to be the same as Nick Chubb before? I don't think so, but that's at least annoying enough for a guy that's pretty reliant on volume to succeed. So if you look at Joe Mixon, the injury's a mystery. I don't know better than you do, but he needs a lot of work. And unfortunately for him, he's been in a very poor offensive line. And based on just the personnel now, the coaching might get this group together and do a little bit better. But based on that initial situation, it's going to be hard for any Houston running back to succeed, let alone him. So if we were just betting on a pure talent, purely who is a better running back, Joe Mixon would be like here, tier 6, like top 15, 20 guy. Very good player. But when you're a Texan, it's a bad offensive line. There's some committee vibes. He's hurt. That's what makes him still a flex play. Now, if there's better news on him, then I would move him up. If he was really healthy, maybe he goes like RJ Harvey, maybe after Kamara or after Henderson, I'd say. After his preseason game, I got to give Henderson at least a little love relative to where he was before. But right now, with the injury, with the line concerns, the offense should be a little bit better in general, but there are a lot of mouths to feed in Houston. So the targets that Joe Mixon does get helped by a little bit. These aren't like crazy. This is catches, yards. These numbers aren't crazy, but if he's losing some of that work to Woody and other receivers, that's a concern for me, and that's why he's RB30. RB31, Tyrone Tracy. From all of the camp reports, it seems like he's ahead of Cam Scatabo. I'm not the biggest Tracy fan. He was okay as a runner, kind of a jag type of player. This Giants line is supposed to be a concern, but I think the defense will be improved. I think they'll dump the ball down a decent amount. I think that Devin Singletary will also have some degree of an impact in this offense. And with all of that said, when you're at RB31, this might be the last starting running back on the board. He isn't anything special. This could be Cam Scatabo's backfield by the second half of the year, but these boring picks where he's a guy getting carries, this offense will at least hopefully be decent. I'm a relative believer in Russ and Dart, at least compared to what Jones did last season. Obviously, it's a rough environment for any quarterback, but I think there might be a slight improvement. So that's the bull case on Tracy, but really he's the last starting guy on the board. So not that exciting, but if you're in a pinch, he might be the last guy. Down at tier 7, I kind of voiced some concerns in the Caleb Johnson section, but Jaylen Warren, he's a good player. I just don't see him ever leading this backfield. He's a very good receiver. He's a good receiving blocker. But the team drafted Caleb Johnson for a reason. I'm not going to trust Arthur Smith to give anybody, aside from Bijan Robinson, the full workload in this offense. This line isn't great. He's competing for carries. I guess if you need a guy in the flex to fill the spot, if you've heavily invested in other areas, he can at least get you decent points, but I wouldn't be particularly excited to have Warren on my team. The idea that he's going to be some bell cow is crazy to me. I just don't see it. I think it's just a nasty committee. 33, Ramondre Stevenson. I alluded to it in the TreVeyon Henderson piece, but I think that Ramondre is going to get a lot of carries in this offense. Last year, yes, he does have fumbling problems, so that puts him at a very heavy downside risk. With that said, he is a good runner of the football. He can at least catch the ball. This line was literally the worst in football last year, arguably band for band with the Dolphins in the skibbity off. You can make arguments either way, but this is projecting to be with Will Campbell. With other acquisitions, they retooled the line. Vrabel is installing more of a physical culture. I think they'll win more games. I think this could be a wild card team, and in those positive game scripts, I think that Ramondre Stevenson is going to get a lot of work. I'm ahead of him relative to market. He's one of my heaviest owned players in Underdog Fantasy, which, if you don't know what that is, you draft teams, you're in these big prize pools, and you compete to win. It's a lot of fun. Definitely would recommend Underdog Fantasy. I got to get like a code eventually, so it's not some gibberish. So that's for the future, though. So Ramondre, I think he has a role. It's going to be a pretty good offense, positive game scripts. He's at least not totally useless as a pass catcher. The fumbling problems are a concern. I think at least before he makes the coaching staff crash out, I think he'll at least last. And I don't think he's some awful football player that when you're at RB33, this is a good value and a good spot for him. As one of the last guys that really gets carries on the board. It gets thin. Once you pass like Jordan Mason, if Mixon isn't healthy, it's getting rough. Next is Travis Etienne. I could look stupid if he gets traded, but the Jacksonville Jaguars, they are changing their mind, it seems, every day in this backfield. Travis Etienne had a rough year last year. I don't love this offensive line for run blocking, especially. I think for pass blocking, they'll at least keep Trevor upright to run some more quick schemes around Brian Thomas, Travis Hunter. Brent Strange will be all right, but it worries me for these running backs. Tank Bigsby is really the best pure running back on the roster, in my opinion. Travis Etienne is maybe the best all-around back, but it feels like Tank is like formerly Najee Harris. He's like the Caleb Johnson to Jalen Warren here. But I think with Etienne having a possibility of being traded, I think he deserves to be ahead of Bigsby. And in this kind of fun fringe flex, maybe high bench discussion, where if he gets traded, depends where he goes. If he's a Cowboy, put him up around Pollard, Montgomery maybe, because I think he would get a really heavy role. Chicago, I put him probably ahead of Swift, maybe right next to each other. That would be a really fun discussion. There are other teams, but if he's still a Jaguar, this could be a very frustrating backfield, because I think, especially when you're year one as a head coach, there's a lot of chaos. You're in a new building. There's going to be a lot of shuffling and figuring things out as they go. I think the natural thing is they're testing who's the best guy, who can handle the situations. They don't have as much loyalty to Etienne. I think he's talented, but I would prefer him in a better situation. So he's kind of a roll of the dice type of pick, but there's real upside there. But not like these guys doing a little scroll here. Down to the next tier, J.K. Dobbins. He was an efficient back as a Charger. This Broncos offensive line, both in terms of pass block and run block, as I mentioned, is going to be pretty good. He doesn't catch the ball, which kind of downgrades him relative to some of the other guys, but I think he was an excellent value. He ended up in a very good place. Dobbins has had extensive injury history, but he is still in his 20s. He's a younger guy. He's definitely a pretty good pure runner. He could get red zone work. He's kind of like a Ramondre Stevenson type, with his concern being that injuries. Dobbins has had a lot of injuries in the past. He is a good pure runner. RJ Harvey had a lot of team investment, just like TreVeyon. But Ramondre gets the edge because I think he's just healthier, and that kind of lowers that risk. I think Dobbins won't attract as much volume as a Ramondre, and that's why he's slightly down for me. But these are pretty tight. There's a big drop. I've said it many times, but it's worth repeating. Next is Zach Charbonnet. As I mentioned with Kenneth Walker, he's had some foot concerns. He's missed a lot of games here and there. Charbonnet, when he plays, he is very good. There's some possibility he gets traded. Maybe if the team was bad, they would trade him. It seems like they want to use two guys, not as like some 50-50 scenario, but more of a 70-30. Because he doesn't offer the immediate lineup value, that puts him 36. I'm maybe slightly more aggressive than market. I think he's 37 or 38 on underdog. With that said, if he's the guy, he is the guy. If something happens to Ken Walker, we hope he's healthy, but he's arguably the best handcuff value in the whole sport. So for that reason, that puts him at 36. And he's a very talented player, very good as a receiver, runner. You have it. When he had an opportunity, he produced. So that's the Charbonnet case. Next, I'm pretty ahead of market. Braylon Allen, I mentioned it with Breece Hall. It's more of a committee. This Jets line, I think, is top 5 to 10 in terms of run blocking. Yes, there are a lot of mouths to feed in terms of carries, but I think they'll be one of the leaders in running attempts, and that spells very good for Braylon Allen. He doesn't have to be amazing as a player. He had some bad efficiency metrics in his rookie year. He's still a young guy, but he's powerful. Chance he gets a lot of red zone and goal line work. He's another one of these power guys with Dobbins, Ramondre. These are a pretty tight tier. You could argue that 7 and 8 are pretty close. Braylon, just on the fact that the Jets are going to be losing games, they're going to be in negative game scripts. I think they will still run the crap out of the ball. He has talent, he has athleticism, and if this staff can really get this line together and get him to just be average and give him a good workload, I think he's a really good value at RB37. Running back 38, Tyler Algier. I'm pretty ahead of market on him. I think he's just one of the most talented backup running backs. I think he had a 1,000-yard season in his rookie year. The Falcons are one of the best run blocking lines in the game. If anything happened to Bijan, arguably Tyler Algier. Where would I rank Algier? Maybe Chuba zone. Maybe they get another person. You could argue that Algier would be up here, RB15. He's just so talented, a great pure runner. He can catch the ball. Very good offensive line. I just think he's underrated. I think he's one of the most high upside handcuffs in this sport. 39, Cam Scatabo. He's been hurt. I think he's a really good receiving running back. I do worry about his running chops as a pure runner, but he has some opportunity to win this job. It's an ambiguous backfield. I just don't think Tracy's that good. I'm not necessarily the biggest Scatabo guy, but what he does do well are the things that are valuable for fantasy, whether that's catching passes, scoring touchdowns. Those are really the keys. I think it's Ian Harditz, but I might be mixing that up. You know those videos where they show like 1 point PPR and it's like a really hard 10-yard run and it's just like a routine, easy, good catch? Scatabo benefits from that. If we ever changed the system, I would have him ranked lower, but because of his opportunity to win the backfield from Tracy, he's got to be in this tier for me. And if they're losing games, I think they'll use him as a receiver. Number 40, another ambiguous backfield guy. Kind of echoes some of the stuff I said with ETN. Tune was drafted by the new regime in Jacksonville. They definitely want him to succeed. Whether he's ready to succeed is TBD. He's explosive. He's a capable receiver. We'll see if he's able to garner the opportunities away from ETN and Tank Bigsby. It looks like Bigsby and ETN are ahead of him, but for the upside, I have Tune ahead. You could definitely put Bigsby if you're more of a safe drafter here, but the upside of Tune, if ETN gets traded, I'm a very heavy believer that ETN's not going to end up a Jaguar. He has the most name brand value of any of the running backs. If they're trying to shorten the room and have it a bit more consolidated, he's the one guy they could actually get real draft capital from. And because they traded up for Travis Hunter, they would be incentivized to acquire a little bit of draft capital, especially for a younger team in general. 41, Ray Davis, one of the best handcuffs in the game. This tier is pretty close for me. With James Cook signing, it just seems like he's the guy. Ray Davis wasn't that special as a runner. As a receiver, he's pretty good. He could catch the ball. He has good yak ability. He could get some red zone and goal line work. I still think that's James Cook. But if he were able to get the job from James Cook, like if James Cook would have to get hurt, I think you don't give a guy that much money for him to lose a lot of carries. And Cook is a capable receiver. So for that reason, I'm slightly below market on Ray Davis. But this offense is awesome, and it's worth having him as an upside play. 42, Trey Benson, for the injury-prone reasons of James Conner. And there's some whispers of Benson getting a bigger role. I'm just not that into him in general, but because of the opportunity and the fragility ahead of him, I think you have to rank him around this range. He's pretty much a jag as a running back, but in a good offensive environment, I think Amari DiMercado would be pretty annoying for him, but I think he would get 2-to-1 ratio of the work, and for that reason, he's got to be in this like good handcuff kind of tier. 43, Tank Bigsby. I kind of mentioned it with ETN and Tootin, but it's a very ambiguous backfield with a new coaching staff. Bigsby is the best pure rusher on the roster, but because they don't have a great offensive line, we'll see how the offense is. I don't think they're going to be winning a ton of games. That worries me a bit with Bigsby. I think there's some possibility he's traded, but he's not as big of a name brand as Travis Etienne. I'd actually enjoy Bigsby in a team with a pass-catching running back like the Bears. He would be a good pair with DeAndre Swift to be in sort of a Braylon Allen, Ramondre type of role to contrast ahead of either Roshan or Kyle Monangai. But now that he's currently a Jaguar, I have him as a mid-tier RB4 type of player where he'll fill in for bye weeks. I think ETN or Tune are really the ones that the coaching staff wants to succeed. They might find that Bigsby is the best pure runner on the roster, but they're going to be losing games and behind. Bigsby doesn't really catch the ball. So for that reason, he's about 43 for me. I think I'm maybe about even to market. His price has gone up. I've gotten him pretty early. So next is Dylan Sampson, ambiguous backfield in Cleveland. He has some receiving chops, 4th-round pick. Ford might start the year as the starter, but I don't think he's particularly amazing. I think Sampson will eventually be the starter. Quinshon Judkins is a very mysterious type of player. We don't know what's going to happen. Not a legal expert here, but obviously if Judkins plays, Sampson would go down probably to the 60s. But for now, as a guy who's probably the 1B, 1A in a committee, it's probably 50-50 with Ford. the team is more incentivized as a losing team to see what they have in the younger guy. They kind of know who Ford is at this point, but Ford isn't a total scrub. So for that reason, RB 44. But he has some potential because it's an ambiguous backfield. 45, one of my most drafted players, the Rico Dowdle generational wealth arc is still here and alive. Chuba Hubbard was not a good receiving back last year. They gave Rico Dowdle a decent amount of money to be the receiving back while Jonathan Brooks is out for the year. Yes, Trevor Etienne was drafted in the middle rounds, but I think he's a year or two away from actually really contributing to this team. Rico was effective relative to the blocking as a Cowboy. He is the best receiving back on the team right now, and this is a good offense that I believe in. They're going to be losing some games as well due to the defense mostly. He'll get some of the rushing work from Rico or from Chuba, and his price is crazy. He goes way later than this. So in this tier, I have him as close to these guys. These guys are pretty close for me, but it's a rankings video. We got to make distinctions. So 45, Rico Dowdle. 46, Tyjae Spears. I guess I'm a little bit optimistic on the ankle. We saw Mason Taylor come back really quickly. We'll see, obviously, if he's injured more than I think. I'm waiting on the same information you are. But as a talent, he went off in the fantasy playoffs last year. He's a very good receiving back. Cam Ward did like throwing to Damian Martinez and Fletcher Jr. at Miami. The Titans are going to be losing games. I feel like I say that a lot. They're going to be losing games. They're going to be behind in negative game scripts. Tyjae is going to be pretty good when he's healthy. This line's going to be a little bit better. And if something happens to Tony Pollard, he has real upside as a handcuff with a little bit of standalone value as a bye week fill-in. Like, you don't think of these guys now, but once you get to week 5, 6, and you're just desperate, then these guys become relevant. That's why we like doing top 75 over here on this side of the internet. Next is Rachaad White. He's hurt. He's one of the best receiving backs in the National Football League. I still think Bucky is going to get the majority of the carries. I don't see Rachaad having a ton of standalone value. He might be the Rico to Chuba in terms of the Bucky gets the runs, Rachaad gets the receiving work, but Bucky was a very good receiver too. It's really tricky when you have two running backs who are two of the best receiving backs. Is that due to Liam Cohen? Do we boost up Tootin and Etienne for that reason? That's a good debate to have. And we'll see with his injury. But if given the opportunity, Rachaad White would do pretty well. Sean Tucker is definitely capable, but I think the hype on him has been around for a while. And even while he was splitting back in the day with Leonard Fournette, he was still able to put up numbers, acceptable numbers. If something happens to Bucky, he's probably tier 6 range for me. But for now, he's 47. And stay tuned with that injury. Number 48, Austin Eckler. He's in an awesome offense. Maybe the Commanders lose a few more games. I'm a little bit concerned with their defense, but Jaden Daniels is very good. This line is supposed to be better. If they're in negative game scripts, Eckler's going to print. He's very good still with the ball in his hands. He's still a very capable receiver. He loses some of the rushing work, a lot of the rushing work to Bijan Robinson, who I'm a little more into, but for a bye week fill or a very light RB type of build, either in best ball or season long, he's kind of a guy like a Jaylen Warren type that he is in a good offense. He's more of the pure third down guy, but he'll get some rushing work, and I don't think he's washed. He does have some injury concerns being an older guy, but he can still play. If something happened to B-Rob, I think Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt would take a lot of those carries. So that's why he's a little bit lower than some of the other guys that have a scenario where they're printing. Because in the offseason, we don't think as heavily about injuries as we do in season. because we don't see guys get hurt as much, but it is hard for these running backs to survive the entire season. That's why we rank some of these guys a little bit more ahead of these guys. Now down a tier, Javonte Williams. He is not an amazing football player. He was not efficient. When you're kind of putting up crappy numbers with a very good offensive line in Denver, he kind of fumbled the best opportunity he had. Maybe he's better with a bit more time to recover from some of the injuries, but he's still able to attract some volume. That, I mean, we're in RB49 range. I'm definitely below market. He can at least catch the ball. He's not amazing at it, but that's more of a RJ Harvey type of angle where look at all these targets he's getting. He can at least catch it. He's capable. There's a lot of guys here. I think he's just kind of the guy that ends up starting at RB49. You'll take it, but not super excited with him. This line is about below average, so he's not going to get carried as hard as he was in Denver, which is why he's ranked this low. Isaac Guerendo, if he's healthy, he could be a really good handcuff. I think that there's a bit of ambiguity in terms of the talent. A lot of his numbers were from his big run against Seattle. The San Francisco running back chaos is definitely real. Jordan James was drafted. They signed somebody, I believe, as well. It might have been Jeff Wilson. There's a lot of chaos with him, but San Francisco's a top 5 offensive line. He's a capable, explosive Kyle Shanahan back. So for that reason, he's a good handcuff. I'm a little bit behind market compared to others, but still very good player. Next, someone as a handcuff who I think is very underrated. Jonathan Taylor has missed a lot of time. I think he's well ahead of Tyler Goodson. Tyler Goodson dropped a 4th and 2 pass that cost the Colts the playoffs a couple years ago. I don't think Goodson is much of a threat. He's far less of a threat to Giddens as Isaiah Davis, who actually put up really good efficiency numbers in very limited work, to be fair. For Braylon Allen, for DJ Giddens. The Colts are a top 10 offensive line. Giddens was a very good prospect. A lot of people you and I respect like him a lot. If something happened to Taylor, I think he would do very well. I think he would be a pure running back type of click. Maybe B-Rob, RB2 range. Even more if they really kicked Goodson. And Khalil Herbert at one time was good, and he has been thrust into irrelevancy. So Giddens, I think, is very underrated. Good prospect, very good situation, frankly, for where he was drafted. Jaden Blue, more of an ambiguous backfield. I just think Dallas is a team that's right to make a trade. I didn't love his prospect profile. I think he's a very good receiving back. If you think the Cowboys are going to be a bad football team, I think Blue could easily be in the Dylan Sampson, Tyjae Spears tier. He's definitely a capable receiver. He had a lot of fumbling issues. He's explosive. I don't buy into the idea that he's this amazing pure running back. He is explosive. I think that the coach speak that he's like a Darren Sproles. I think that's a very fair comparison. If you think this is a Bengals South type of deal where Jaden Blue essentially is a very low-end Chase Brown, like a 60% snap share Chase Brown. Now, if you look at Chase Brown, he did very well as a Bengal with a lot of volume, but most of his damage in terms of efficiency, a lot of receiving touchdowns. So to me, that's where Jaden Blue could do well as a backup. But I'm maybe slightly below market, but in home leagues, as a handcuff, really it's like an ambiguous backfield. He's not really a handcuff. He's kind of an ambiguous backfield type of guy, like a Samson. So that's where Jaden Blue is for me. Now, Najee, I really like the player. I'm not an eye expert. This is a very hard call in terms of where to put him. This line is definitely going to suffer losing Rashawn Slater. I think Omarion Hampton is really the guy over here. But Najee is a good football player, but because of his eye, I have to rank him this low. If he was healthy, if the doctors were like, he's ready to go, put him next to Dobbins or maybe ahead. But eyes are scary. That is not a fun situation to be in. Next, Nick Chubb. Alluded to it with Joe Mixon. There's a bit of ambiguity with Mixon's health. If the team is bad and Mixon's all right, I mean, I could see them trade him. I don't think that'll happen, but Mixon's a very talented player, and he's never had a good offensive line his whole life, which is super frustrating for him. Like, he's been a Bengal, he's been a Texan. Like, he's basically been facing horrible boxes and blocking for basically his whole career. It really stinks. With that said, Chubb is kind of a specimen. He's had a lot of injuries. Who knows if he's actually explosive, but I think just given the opportunity, they did give him $5 million. As a red zone guy, as a pure runner, he's not much of a receiver as a running back. He's pretty blah, but this is RB54. So for that reason, I'm fine getting Chubb late as an interesting guy. Maybe not the funnest sleeper in a season long because you're churning a lot of the back end of the roster, but for best ball, he's more of a best ball guy. Quinshon Judkins, he's actually fun as a sleeper. I'd take him a little bit earlier in home leagues and season long just because he has the upside. Now he's going to burn a roster spot because he's not on IR. He's just kind of there. He's like a effectively suspended guy. So he just sits on your bench. That's key to note. He is a talented player. He's not going to catch passes. Really, they're going to be losing a lot of games. I think the upside, if he does come back to the lineup, let's say, look, he's totally innocent. He's playing the whole year. I put him around here. Caleb Johnson, maybe before Tracy. I don't think the upside case is that great on him because of the team he's at. The Browns aren't a great blocking team right now. They used to be really good back in the day, but this is a different Browns unit than what they're used to. They can pass block a bit for some of the passing game guys, the Njokus, the Judys of the world, but for Judkins, he's a fun late stash, but woo, tough situation. Okay, so bit of a typo here. I have Brooks 56, Shipley 57. So Brooks has a little bit of an opportunity to gain the dominant spot in the Bengals backfield. I don't think it's a high chance, but it's not zero. I don't see that with Shipley. Barkley is way too good to ever give up the job unless he was hurt. Shipley would be a really fun play. I think he's ahead of A.J. Dillon, well ahead. So he's one of the better backups, especially at price, but he is a clear and absolute backup. Even like a Ray Davis, he has some standalone value. James Conner's a little bit more injury prone. There's some ambiguity with some of these other guys. Taj Brooks has less of a guy ahead of him. So that's what would put Taj Brooks just ahead of Shipley. But both of these guys are in fun, high-scoring offenses. Brooks can catch passes too. He would still be in a quasi-committee with Samaje Perine if Chase Brown went down. But as a rookie, he could, in some probability, snatch that job. But it's low. Shipley, pure backup, great offensive line, good player, former fourth-round pick. He flashed some talent in the preseason, and that's the logic on Shipley. There's not a lot of sample size on him. 58, Roschon Johnson. He's kind of a mysterious guy. What if it's Kyle Monangai? What if they trade for somebody? But he's survived. And this Bears offensive line is supposed to be better. They're supposed to score more. They have Ben Johnson. He's kind of been touted as the goal line guy. He's nothing special in terms of that role, but he holds a role. He's kind of a lesser version of Brian Robinson, which is pretty not exciting. DeAndre Swift could definitely get hurt or lose carries. Kyle Monangai is a 7th-round rookie. I did like some of his tape. There is a bit of that Isiah Pacheco type of grind set. I'm not saying that he's like as talented of a player, but Roschon's the guy right now, and at RB58, we're fine with that. 59, Miles Sanders. He's in an ambiguous backfield. Many years ago, he was actually good as an Eagle. It shows how important team situation, offensive line, game script, all of that stuff matters. Now, he's hurt in preseason. I was taking him a bit more in some of the best ball formats, but because he doesn't necessarily do one of the roles well, he's kind of an all-around guy. He kind of doesn't differentiate himself in terms of a specialized immediate role. He could easily be a 0, but he could definitely get a role and win over Javonte Williams, but he needs to be in training camp. He's kind of started out behind Javonte, and he needs to prove that he's better in order to secure that role. But at this price, late in your draft as a sleeper, fine. I'm fine with it. Now down to more of the fun kind of super YOLO picks. I mean, if these guys weren't YOLO picks, now we're digging deep. Keaton Mitchell averaged a lot of yards per carry not too long ago. He's off an injury, but he looked healthy in preseason. The Ravens are going to score a lot of points. He's going to get a lot of blowout work. I think that's kind of where I'm docking Henry slightly when you're at these high levels of in this tier 2, where you have Henry going beneath these other guys. If something happens to a 31-year-old running back, I think that Keaton Mitchell is the guy. Justice Hill is a great receiving back, but Keaton has the opportunity to be the guy in a very good offense. So that's what excites me. He's explosive. I think he could have maybe some random 6 for 50 and a touchdown and a blowout type of potential, but he's an exciting handcuff. I like getting him late in season-long drafts and best ball. 61, Jalen Wright. The Dolphins want a goal line back. He did score later on, but he was stuffed at the goal line. This running back room is definitely rough behind Achane. You lose Alexander Madison to a season-long injury. Ollie Gordon is talented. He looks pretty good, but Jalen Wright got the early opportunities, and he has the extra year of experience with the team, with the scheme. It's really a role pick here. I don't think Jalen Wright is an amazing player. The line is pretty questionable, but he has a role. He's kind of like Roschon, but with a worse line. At 61. 62, Jerome Ford. He could be starting the season. You might be in week 1 or week 2 and say, Shawn, what the hell? Like, he got 12 points week 1, but I think his shelf life is going to be rather short. This is a losing team. This could be a nasty committee where no one's good. Not every backfield is going to produce a viable player. At RB62, I'm okay with it, but I'm below market relative to where other people are. I just think that he's not that great. He's had opportunities, and it's just going to be gross in Cleveland outside of the receiving options. Next is Justice Hill. He has more standalone value. He has less upside in a season long where you're just filling in bye weeks. You just need 8 points to like literally survive on a light RB team. Justice Hill fills that role, and Lamar could just print and get a lot of touchdowns. And if the Ravens do lose games, which we don't think they will, but in the case that they're down or they're losing, he does get some 2-minute stuff. You just want to be in a good offense, and that's why Justice Hill would be 63. 64, Blake Corum, undefeated national champion. He looks like the number 2 guy in LA. It's a good offensive line with Stafford having a lot of back issues. That kind of worries me with drafting Corum anywhere above price, but he was one of the better red zone guys in college. He did have a kind of a tough rookie season, but he's certainly capable. He can catch the ball, and if the team's losing games, maybe he gets that receiving role and catches a few passes. Maybe it's Jarquez, but it's ambiguous. But if Stafford's healthy, this could be a good offense for him. But he's still fighting off the next guy, Jarquez Hunter, 65. Just an ambiguous situation. One of these guys could easily pop if something happens to Kyren. Kyren Williams has missed time before. It's a very good offensive line in terms of run blocking. We are worried about Jimmy G or any other option that they sign. I hope they trade for Jameis, but there's no rumor of that. But just as a fantasy football brained wisher over here, he would be awesome with them. I mean, remember Baker Mayfield, that comeback when he just literally showed up on Tuesday? And I'm not sure if it was a Thursday night game. It might have been. Show up on a Tuesday, come back on a Thursday. Like, there's a lot of possibilities. So, of these two running backs, I think it's worth for a best ball format to at least get a little bit, because one of these guys you could see on the waiver wire, and Jarquez Hunter is just crushing. Or Corum is crushing. But it's close for me between those two. Someone that people just don't seem to talk about or care about, the Saints, Kendre Miller, running back Saints. He's only 23 years old. He's younger than RJ Harvey, who is an older prospect. Kendre Miller seems to be the clear number 2. Yeah, Cam Akers got some of the drives with the first team, but if something happens to Kamara, who is an older running back, who could easily get traded on a team with Tyler Shuck, Jake Hayner, Spencer Rattler. This is a team that could easily lose a lot of games. And if Kamara is traded, he gets hurt. If he's even slightly dinged up late in the season, Kendre Miller is easily a guy to monitor on waivers and late in best ball drafts, because he was a good prospect. I think he was a former third-round pick. He looks good in preseason, and no one seems to care for some reason. It's a good offensive line. For run blocking, I don't know if he's like the greatest receiving back. He's not Kamara, certainly, but he has an opportunity to get time if a starter goes down, and he's RB66, and he's basically free. Next is Woody Marks. I'm not as into him as other people. I think he's more of a third down guy. It's just a very ambiguous room. Maybe I eat my words on this one. This was one of the harder ones to rank, because the offense isn't projected to just go crazy like the Ravens. And there's a lot of guys. Mixon could be ready by week 1. Nick Chubb could be there. Daria Gubawale. It's gross in Houston. So I'm not that excited with Marks. I think he could catch passes, but I think for our fantasy teams, just as a sleeper guy, these rookies as sleepers, they're good guys to have, just because they're more mysterious than some of the other guys. Like, we know who Justice Hill is at this point, relatively speaking. But Woody could be something. But Justice Hill has more standalone value. He's going to actually contribute, most likely in a bye week scenario, in a deeper league. 68, Sean Tucker. He's a pure runner. He has absolutely cooked. Let's look at the Sean Tucker game. He went absolutely bananas. I believe the one time he got an opportunity. 34, 31. He went crazy with volume. Obviously, the team kicked a lot of the Bucks' butt in that one. So that has to matter too. It wasn't just him. He's still a very capable player, explosive. They've been saying he's supposed to get some more run in this team with Rachaad White. He could get it, but I don't know. He's still the third guy here. You still have two very good guys. Bucky is still as RB9, all the way up here at RB9, is still the incumbent. And by incumbent, I mean the entrenched starter. Bucky is awesome. So I don't see a scenario without Bucky and Rachaad getting hurt. Maybe if Bucky got hurt, he's a fun backup, but he's still an RB3 right now at the moment. So that's why he's 68. 69 is Marshawn Lloyd. He's a backup. He's had some injury concerns, but I guess he's back at practice, so we'll see. Someone in a good offense that's a backup to Josh Jacobs, who's been very healthy and resilient, but if you're a backup in Green Bay, Matt LaFleur, this line, which isn't great at run blocking, but LaFleur would at least give Lloyd an opportunity if he was a starter. He'd probably be like a Tyrone Tracy, Caleb Johnson, like lower in this range, maybe around here. Not that exciting, but it's a good offense. And maybe Emmanuel Wilson would steal some time, but it's RB 69. So the lucky, nice 69. Number 70, Raheem Mostert. Someone's got to be the backup with the Raiders. He's still a talented back. I know he flamed out in Miami. It's still a decent offensive line, run-heavy situation. If something happened to Jeanty, I think they would just hammer him, or maybe they sign someone. But at RB 70, I think there's some possibility at RB 70. But if you're this deep in and you're crashing out over RB 70, I salute you. I'm ready to debate hard in the comments. I've had some intense Discord discussions on some round 18, 19, 20 guys. He's like a round 20 guy. Number 71, Brashard Smith. There are dreams of the Jerick McKinnon role. He's a round 7 guy. His PFF grade was 10 points higher than literally any other running back in the class in college. He's a very good receiver. It would definitely help the offense that lost Joe Thuney to get a few quick routes out to Brashard Smith. I don't know if they trust him at that level like a Jerick McKinnon. He's more of a waiver stash for a Patrick Mahomes team. Keep him in mind on your waiver wire. I think the idea with having such a big, long, crazy, why are you talking about 75 guys? Are you out of your freaking mind? Is that when waivers come, when guys get hurt, I don't want you to be surprised. I want you to be the first person. If you're a follower of me, I want you to be the first person to know something about that player. And from these, even if it's just a little blurb, that's going to help. So Brashard Smith, amazing receiving back. We'll see if he gets enough time with the other options. I mean, Eli Mitchell gang's rallying, but it's been 4 years since he's been good. So 72, I might get some hate for putting him this low. I just think the other guys are pretty entrenched. The line isn't amazing. He's a round 7 rushing rookie. But the Shakori Krosky Merritt, Bill gang might come at my door with pitchforks. I'm ready. You could definitely put him in like the Jerome Ford spot, but a lot needs to happen in order for Shakori Krosky Merritt to actually garner time in this offense. It could be Chris Rodriguez who's produced. I understand that he's one running back injury away from getting an opportunity, but it could be a committee. If he was truly injured, maybe you put him as a 1-for-1 with B-Rob. But I think there's a long way to go. You could definitely justify him maybe ahead of Mostert if I had to redo this. But for now, he's at 72. 73, Kyle Monangai. There's some visions of a round 7 Rutgers running back that I think Eric Bieniemy was in Kansas City with Pacheco. At least there's some overlap there. So they might see something in him. Roschon is kind of not the hardest goalie to beat for that RB2 job to score on. So if there's 7, we're in the deep trenches. At RB 73, he could be better than Roschon as the goal line guy if something were to happen to Swift. And Roschon Monangai could be fun. He's ahead of Travis Homer, who did get some time last season. So that's encouraging as a round 7 guy. Isaiah Davis, he could have the most standalone value of maybe this from Kentre Miller down. He did produce well in terms of yards over expected and catches in very limited samples. So we don't know if he's actually good, but it's a very good offensive line. They want to have some degree of a 3-headed monster. If an injury or a trade happened to Breece Hall, he could absolutely print, and I could eat this ranking. But what rankings are mentioning Isaiah Davis? Not many. So at RB 74, this is actually a really fun sleeper. This area starts getting really hard, but the scenarios are a little bit more confusing. I mean, he's literally at RB3 right now. That has to matter. So RB 74 for him. And last but not certainly least, a talented running back, a bad offensive line. He was clearly the 3rd guy, but he's a rookie. It's preseason week 1. He could definitely emerge. So Ollie Gordon could beat Jalen Wright for his spot. I have them the same tier. Jalen Wright has the inside track. That's why he's ranked 14 spots ahead. So that makes Ollie Gordon an opportunity as a sleeper 2 snatched some chain as the RB2 for the Dolphins. Behind Achane. Achane is a smaller guy. He certainly has some injury-prone characteristics as well. Whew. So that does it. 75 running backs. I would be curious to see if anyone else is pulling up at this level. If you have watched through this entire thing, I salute you. You're a total sicko. There's no way you're losing your home league. Your advanced rate in best ball is going to be amazing. So just let's vibe out and recap just some of the guys so I don't end on Ollie Gordon. That's a little degenerate of us. So tier 1, these elite guys. Tier 2, some really talented players with questions. Tier 3, really good offenses and lines. Tier 4, some talented players with some situations that are a little bit scary. With the line, with the team, trade possibilities. This is a talented group. Some injury concerns, some committee concerns. But this is a really good value area. This is where RB starts getting slightly gross, but you're like okay with it, like decent. Some of the lower end starters, and you're starting to get some committee guys, Jones and Mason. Then you go down to some of the really questionable guys, more of the second guys in committees, but they'll get real work. Ramondre Etienne could get traded. He could go up. Then you'll go to some premium handcuffs, some lower ends like RB2 guys, committee guys, Braylon Allen, Algier premium handcuffs, 2 ambiguous backfields, some good receiving guys. Rico is generational wealth. Please, please, please get Rico. Giddens is underrated for Jonathan Taylor's injury history. You look at some of these other ambiguous situations, some handcuffs, it starts getting gross. Then you get to a genuine sicko degenerate range where you're hoping, like, not hoping, but you're banking on a Derrick Henry injury, Quinshon Judkins not playing football, Kamara injury, Bucky injury, some ambiguous stuff, some late round rookies. So, yeah, that about does it. I'm Shawn. I'm making videos here on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube, Shawn FF. I'm on X, Farshi FF. Patreon potentially on the way. Just working through these rankings. Just want to drop crazy, ridiculous value. You know, spread the love, spread the information. Spread this around. Hopefully you talk to people that aren't just in your fantasy leagues that you shared around. I appreciate it, and good night.